Hello YouTubers, and welcome to this review of the Cannondale SuperSix EVO. Now, I've had this bike for about 2 months now, and in this review we are going to go over the various components, because there's a fair few parts that make up this bike in terms of the Dura Di2 group set, the electronic group set, the Mavic wheels, and even the pedals. And in this review what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you close-up shots, show you the workings, some of the little nitpicks that I have about the bike, and I'll insert some video clips so that you can get a good idea of what it's like out on the road as well. Now, first of all, what I want to read to you is what it says on the Cannondale website about this bike. It says the Cannondale SuperSix EVO is the ultimate road racing machine, designed to be a blend of all of the key factors of performance, weight, stiffness, strength, compliance, handling, and aerodynamics. The EVO is so good that the Tour magazine in Germany named it the best bike in the world, and that was in March of 2012. So that's quite a statement. Now, just to give you some insight in terms of my experience on bikes, because I think if any novice or any person who jumped on this kind of bicycle, let's say they've jumped off a bike that weighs about 8 kilograms or 7.5 kilograms, they are just going to think this is marvelous because it is so light and responsive. This bike, as it stands here, including the bottle cages and the pedals, these are Look Keo 2 Max pedals, weighs in at 6.5 kilograms. So it's around the 14-pound mark. It is under the legal weight limit for UCI racing. So if I was to race this in a UCI race, I would need to add weight to it, otherwise it would be considered illegal. The bike that I've been riding for the past 5 years or 6 years with a break in between, I had a Trek Madone which was okay, but I came off a Giant Team Issue 2006 which had the integrated seat post. It weighed in at around anywhere between 6.8 kilograms to 7.1 kilograms, depending on the wheel set I would ride. I used to ride either the Campagnola Bora 3s, the deeper set wheels with tubular wheels, carbon. They used to be very light. I used to have a set of Eastern Ascent 2s. So they were also carbon, also very lightweight. They weighed in about 1.1 kilograms. Which is lighter than this wheel set. So first off, I do need to give a big thanks to Landon at Eddie's Bike Shop in North Olmsted, because he put a lot of work into getting this together for me. There have been a few teething issues along the way, and I'm going to take you in closer just to highlight the components and the issues that I've had. Right, so as we come in for a closer look at the bike, the one thing I wish to highlight is that this Cannondale actually comes with a compact front chainring, which I think is really handy. So in the past it was always a problem. Let's say you decided, depending on the terrain where you lived or whether you're going to take a trip to France and you're going to climb some big mountains, you'd have to change your whole crank to get down to a compact crank, whereas now the modern cranks do allow you to actually change just the front chainring. So I must say that's a great added addition to this bike, and it comes by default. Then also with your bike you'll get a Shimano charger to charge the battery on this bike, which operates the electronic group set, which obviously drives the servos in both the front derailleur and the rear derailleur. Now, the actual battery in this 2013 iteration of the Shimano Di2 is contained in the seat post. It's a very thin cylindrical battery, and they put it in the seat post, but if you do have a bike which has either got an integrated seat post or is a different profile, then they may have to put it in the down tube, but nonetheless it is still possible to do that. On this bike you will note it has a very clean profile in terms of that there are no brake cables. All the cable work for the most part is done internally, and obviously because a lot of the cable work is actually wiring, electronic wiring to the various components, then that remains very clean as well in terms of keeping a very clean look and non-fussy look on the bike. The actual charging station or port is actually on here underneath the front stem. On here as well, you have an indicator to show whether your battery is charged or not. All you need to do is actually hold down one of the levers for about a second and you'll get a light flashing on there, and I'll just demonstrate it. Right, so on the actual port itself, you've got the indicator lights, and if you hold on over here, I've got the kind of gear selector button, and if you hold that for just over a second, you then get the flashing indicator. Now the flashing indicator means that I'm about 50% of the battery charge. Solid green means almost 100% or 100%. And then when it goes to flashing red or red, that means, well, red means you're getting down to 25% charge. Flashing red means your battery is just about to die. Now they do claim that the battery lasts about 1,500 miles or around 2,000 kilometers. And for even a serious amateur, that riding will be at least 3 to 4 months. So it would be a long time before you need to recharge the battery. And I say there are lots of warning signs in terms of noting what's going on with the lights. If the battery does start getting flat, your front derailleur will be the first one to go, so still allowing you changes in the rear. And if you get that flat that it stops functioning, then the rear derailleur will just stay in the gear that it was, and you'll have a single gear to get home. So the pedals I have on this bike to bring it in at 6.5 kilograms, they aren't particularly light. You can certainly get a lot lighter. They are Look. I'm used to riding Look, and these are the Look Keo 2 Max. So these are the changes for the rear derailleur. You can, because this bike is literally electronic and computer controlled, if you will, you can actually reconfigure your changes so that this side could change the rear derailleur, or you can have it change the front derailleur. So obviously by default this is rear, but you can switch it around. You've got this little button here, which is obviously going to take your gears, jump them down, and then if you push the front part here, which has got this little texturing, that'll take you up. Now I'll just demonstrate how that works. Now the other handy feature about this is that you can actually program how quick these are going to change, or whether you can actually hold the buttons and change right through the gears. So this is new for the Dura Di2 for 2013. You can hold down and change right through, and I'll just demonstrate that. Okay, and you'll note I did that change, and on the rear cluster it went right through the gears, and you wouldn't have heard any chain rub from the front derailleur. So the front derailleur automatically adjusts as you change in gears, and I'll just demonstrate that. So as you can see, it makes those small adjustments on the actual rear derailleur itself, just so that you don't get any chain rub on the actual front derailleur if you've got a cross chain situation going on between your front and back derailleurs. Right, so let's now talk about some of the teething problems I have had, because for the most part, if you read any reviews on the internet, they mostly rave about this drivetrain, whether it's the Ultegra or the Dura-Ace electronic drivetrains. They work very well. The benefit is obviously that they will change gears under high torque. You're not going to have cables which are going to stretch and therefore going to change or make your gear changes more difficult. It's the same change every time you flick those gears. Now, if you note on the actual crank itself, you can actually see I have scratches on the front here, and that's because after about 6 rides, I was kind of time trialing in a park, and then I kind of took some 60-mile, 65-mile rides out in the country. And on those rides, for some reason, the front chain, when I changed up, was being thrown off occasionally. Only like twice in a 60-mile ride was being thrown off the front chain ring. And the problem was, it then got caught up behind the peg, which is behind the actual main crank. So if you look behind the main crank, you can see you've got that pin there, and the chain would slip down there and get caught, and then it was very difficult to pull it out. Now, I had to go back to the bike shop twice to get it sorted out, and I certainly say I don't think it's anything to do with the actual bike shop, but I think on the front derailleur, which you do the settings on this mechanically, so you loosen the bolt on the front here to make adjustments up or down or change the toe in to get it lined up correctly. So I think there is a little bit of finesse there that needs to be spot on. And also, and perhaps more critically, and I'm sure Cannondale or Shimano won't like to hear this, but ultimately a Shimano drivetrain should be used complete. So here we can see that Cannondale have their own set of chain rings, not the Shimano chain rings. And I know by design Shimano always specifically designed so that their drivetrain works very well with their chain rings. And I've seen this on other bikes. As soon as you start mixing components on drivetrains, you potentially hit problems. Now that I have got it set up, it's changing sweetly without any issue. But I think potentially the setup of this configuration can be more fiddly because of the variance with using the different chain rings. So here we go. I'll just demonstrate the front derailleur, and the one thing I want you to note when it actually changes back up is that it changes up and then comes back a bit. And you'll note that little, as I said, that little operation when it goes up, comes back. And that was also one of my concerns. It obviously helps it get up to the chainring and then come back. But it's that little extra push over, which I think was also partly to blame for my chain being thrown off. But nonetheless, the actual derailleur has been towed in a bit more to prevent that. And now it seems to be working 100%. Again, the one advantage of having these electronic group sets is that you're able to add on auxiliary buttons for various situations. So here I've got the sprinter buttons on my actual hoods or on my bars, and these allow you when you're in a sprint situation to come up and continue to hold the bar and still make gear changes. And I'll just do a video insert just to demonstrate how that works. Basically, these are very easy to use. When I'm time trialing, I'll be sitting down here in the bars, and this enables me to make very easy, quick changes on the actual derailleurs themselves. So you can program these to either go up or down. These shifters on my bike are programmed just to obviously work the rear derailleur. So I can change down when I'm sprinting, or I can change up to make it easier. Ultimately, in a sprint, this is the one that's going to be most likely to be used. You can get outboard auxiliary plugs for if you time trialing and you've got a pair of clip-on bars, and for climbers there's an auxiliary button which you can have on the top of the bars to help you climb. And that can be really helpful because if you are on a climb and you've got a rhythm, you need to change gears, you don't have to go down and reach. You can just sit here and change gears. Certainly one of the other kind of pros which Shimano write about and rave about is the new ergonomics of their hoods. They are very comfortable. They've got a nice material around them, so they're very easy to grip. The one advantage again with these Mavic wheels, and I'll show you the braking surface. The braking surface is designed to really be grippy even in wet weather. So it does mean that often if you're on the hoods and you've got an emergency braking situation, you don't have as much braking power when you're in the hoods. But with the new braking surface on these wheels, you can actually be in the hoods and apply a lot of braking pressure without having to drop into the bars to clamp the brake like that. Right, so the one thing to note about these wheels, they are really light and they accelerate quickly. At any 6.5 kilogram bicycle with a light set of wheels, you'll note spins up and accelerates quickly. And I certainly noted that even from getting off a lightweight 7 kilogram bike onto this bike, I noticed the difference. So these wheels, as I said before, have got this special braking surface. As I bring you into that braking surface, you can see the kind of almost rough file-like serrations on the surface. Now Mavic, these are obviously the Mavic R-SYS SLR wheels, and they weigh 1.295 kilograms. This braking surface, which they seem to, I don't know whether it's a patent, but certainly it's specific to them. They call it the Exolith 2 technology, and they've got specific brake pads for it as well. And I'll just read what they do say about it. So basically they say that the braking distance is shortened by 18% in wet conditions. And I can't say that it's 18%, but I can certainly say I've ridden these in wet and damp conditions, and they do inspire confidence, because normal brakes will tend to glide before they start to grip, whereas these feel grippy straight away. So they certainly work in that regard. The next thing they say is that the special black Mavic XLF2 brake pads ensure quiet and high braking performance and longevity. Now, I'm going to insert a video clip so you can hear what these sound like while I'm braking. As you'll note, there is a lot of noise and squeal that comes off these wheels, particularly the front, which is still bedding in. I have read that people say it takes hundreds of miles for them to bed in, and I can vouch for that. I've easily done 300 to 400 miles on this bike so far, and it is still squealing if I pull the brakes really sharply, to the point where it's embarrassing. And also, you'd be surprised how much you rely on your ears while you're braking, and if you have that much noise, you kind of lose a certain sense in terms of braking and the traction and the amount of traction that you do have on your tires when you're braking. It's more so the case on mountain biking, but still on road biking, you do want to hear what your tires are doing on the road during that process. Mavic do provide these wheels with their own tire as well. I've been particularly fussy about tire choice in the past, so I thought I'd be changing these tires straight away. I have gone down some very sharp descents under heavy braking and tight cornering, and so far these tires have been a dream. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to actually put another set on them. I have not yet tried them yet in the Criterium race series that I do. I'm looking forward to seeing how well they will perform in a Criterium. One other thing to note in terms of the ergonomics of the actual hoods and the brake levers, I found that when I climbed onto this bike, that the reach for my fingers, the levers were set out further than I've been used to, and I thought that had been designed in by Shimano, and I was concerned because now I had a longer reach. But I'm just going to demonstrate under the hood. There's an adjustment. You can adjust these 10 mils, so you've got a lot of play to adjust where the lever sits. So here we go. I'll just demonstrate. If you roll back the top of the hoods, you will see that there is a white adjustment screw here. So all you need to do is get a flat screwdriver and gently adjust that in or out to give you your 10mm of play on the lever. Right, so just a few points to note that Cannondale also say in their kind of sales blurb is that the rear stays as well have a little, and the stays down here have a little bit of flex in them to provide some compliance in terms of the ride of the bike. Now I can certainly say over some of the rough roads that I go over, it certainly doesn't seem to be too bouncy, but it still seems to be firm. I know on my Cannondale mountain bike they employ that same technology for the rear suspension on the Scalper 1. They also say that that matches up with the front fork as well. I say overall, I must say this bike has been a dream to ride. It is very fast. The gear changes, once they're working correctly, are beautiful. Having the electronic gear changes means that, for one, if you're someone with weaker hands or you've done a long race, I've been in a situation where I've done a 200-kilometer race in the cold. Your hands get very tired, and particularly the front derailleur then potentially can be troublesome to change, and particularly for women with weaker hands this can be an issue, and of course with the electronic group set that's no problem. Also, it's got an 11-speed rear cluster, so because it's gone from 10 speed to 11, that means now you've got a nice closer ratio range with that extra gear in there. It's far easier to tune your gear for your cadence to get a real comfortable cadence for your riding conditions. If you're slightly tired, you can afford to play around with your gears a bit more to get the cadence that you're looking for. So I say, hopefully that's answered any questions you may have about the Cannondale SuperSix EVO. It's a brilliant bike. I'm very pleased with its performance. I've seen how I've gained time on the time trial route that I do with it. So certainly, if you do enjoy the video and the review, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll catch you soon for the next video. Cheers.